Thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Lim-Nakron. Just wanted to hop on here and have a discussion with everyone about these new developments surrounding the investigation into possible election interference here in the state of Georgia. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has responded to a motion from the legal team of the former president, Donald Trump. That motion was to disqualify Fani Willis from further investigating his alleged 2020 election interference. It also calls to quash the report that came out, that special purpose grand jury report. And remember, Fani Willis was responsible for impaneling that grand jury to look into this possible election interference. And so this is obviously something that has been very important to her, kind of the outcome of this particular motion. It's something that we've been following very closely on Atlanta News First, Atlanta News First Plus as well. And I want to bring in a special guest joining us at this hour. We have Atlanta-based attorney Erica Wilson here live in our studio. Erica, thanks so much for being with us once again. I know you've spent so much time following this case. So I know you read through that motion, which was more than 24 pages. What was your response to Fani Willis's answer?
Well, it was appropriate, but you also have to understand that these type of responses are almost kind of like required, and so you have a certain amount of time in which you can actually file a response, and if you don't file a response, you can waive your right to be able to do so. So we certainly did expect that she would file a response and that it would be filed timely, but her response was exactly what I thought that it would be. In looking over, and I didn't read the whole, I believe it was 485 pages that Trump and his team filed back in March. I certainly didn't read the whole thing. You skim it, but you'd certainly see that a lot of the things were, it was more so a press release, under the guise of a legal filing. It did not carry much legal merit, and I think Fani's response was indicative of that. A lot of things that he cited were legal issues. He did not have legal standing to do so. Some of the issues he waived for failure to raise those issues timely. And so her response was exactly what I anticipated.
And I should say it was her response that was, more than 24 pages. His motion was, like you said, several hundred pages.
Yeah.
But, in part of her response, she said that basically their motion had no basis in law. And, they're part of the reason, I guess, that the Trump team wanted her to be recused or to be pulled off of the investigation is they cited conflict of interest in some way, that apparently, she had funded, a Democrat who ran against a Republican here in the state of Georgia, the lieutenant governor, I should say. And, basically this insinuation that we've heard many times now from Trump's legal team that it's a politically motivated witch hunt. How do you think that she did in terms of addressing those particular claims?
With Trump in this motion, it was like a big old pot of spaghetti. They threw it on the wall, and they just want to see what kind of sticks, right? None of it really carried a lot of legal merit, particularly as it relates to any conflict of interest or any bias that she may have. If that is true, then half of the DAs in the state of Georgia could be removed for that same reason on both sides of the field, whether it be Democrat or Republican. So that in and of itself does not create a legal conflict. There has to be a legal conflict of interest. It can't be anything personal. It has to be based on legal merit, and there's no legal basis to have her removed simply because she's a Democrat and she supports other Democrats.
And during that special purpose grand jury, Fani Willis said that they heard from some 75 witnesses during their probe, I should say, and looked into some very notable figures. Very notable figures were kind of part of the discussions, part of the inquiries, whether or not, this is not to say that they necessarily are accused of wrongdoing, but just kind of, their actions were looked into as part of the broader context, including the governor, including the Georgia Attorney General, including the former lieutenant governor, and so forth. So, it's certainly many eyes on this, and Fani Willis, Fulton County District Attorney, has said that that an indictment is likely to come this summer. That we could expect an indictment this summer. It's something that could potentially be historic in some way. So I guess big picture then, was this motion by Trump's team really just to kind of, what was the purpose? Was it to create controversy? Was it to kind of delay the inevitable? What was the purpose?
There's several purposes, I believe, that were behind Trump's team filing this motion. For one, you have to understand, we have to go all the way back. Trump, during his limited 4 years in the White House, is responsible for at least 1 in 3 federal judges. So this is filed in federal court. And so it's very strategic on his part, because you roll the dice and perhaps you'll get a judge that you appointed that you may feel garners some favor towards you based on that appointment. Also, you have to look at it now. Trump has kind of ramped up his fundraising behind this, because a lot of his constituents and a lot of his followers are upset, and they're buying into this whole victim mentality. So the more that different states and agencies and court filings happen, the more he is the victim and the more money he actually raises. So there are a lot of reasons outside of Trump just being Trump and liking, let's not forget, he's Mr. Celebrity Apprentice, so he kind of likes some of the attention as well. But he's very strategic. Apart from all of that, he's very strategic. His lawyers are very strategic. There is a very specific reason why what he filed was filed, when it was filed, and where it was filed. And a lot of that has to do with, the political timing. We're coming up on 2024, and he is knee-deep in fundraising at this time. And what we have seen is an uptick in support in his campaign donations based on, all of these things that have been happening with the sexual assault trial and the charges that are now pending in New York as well.
Yeah, and you're mentioning the trial, which there was just a judgment in favor of the plaintiff, E. Jean Carroll, in that sexual assault trial, and Trump's team, of course, planning to appeal, and then you mentioned the indictment, and I want to point our viewers to our website and this article that we've compiled, and particularly one section, if you might be interested in checking out, where this is really an excellent article that I have to credit Tim Darnell, who leads our political coverage on Atlanta News First Plus. I just want to credit him with his amazing work on this article and putting together all these different pieces. But he put together, as you can see, this kind of list of firsts that Trump's indictment adds to his list of firsts in American politics. First president to be impeached in the 21st century, first president to be impeached twice in U.S. history, as well as the first to be acquitted twice, first president in the 21st century to be defeated in a re-election bid. You can see, scroll down a little bit, first ex-president in history to face criminal charges, first ex-president in history to face criminal charges while running a White House campaign. And it's multiple bases for this. I mean, most recently in New York, apart from the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, the criminal charges regarding the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels via attorney Michael Cohen, his former attorney, who was actually testified to the grand jury who ultimately indicted him. But so there's a lot there. But bringing it back home to Fulton County and what we can expect to see here, how much of all that other drama, if you will, is going to factor into what's happening right here?
I think it's going to factor in a significant way. We have to also understand that she has still maintained that charges will be forthcoming this summer. And again, she's doing that strategically because you will have multiple agencies, not only in Fulton County and then the city of Atlanta, but throughout the state, who will have to be prepared and have protocols in place for if and when this indictment does in fact come down. We have to also remember, Georgia's a red state. We did not see a lot of unrest in New York, but we can possibly anticipate that it may come down here. And so she's acting in an abundance of caution by delaying the actual indictment coming down, and such that different agencies can be prepared if there is any type of political unrest, because Trump has been known to kind of send out a dog whistle, if you will, to his supporters, and we don't know if this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Again, I maintain we don't know what's coming down in the indictment, but the one in New York, It's flimsy at best. I believe it might have been a little bit of an overreach, but I believe what we have here in Fulton County may carry a little bit more weight, and therefore may cause a little bit more unrest than we have seen with his previous cases earlier this year.
That's interesting. So you think in New York that was a little bit of an overreach, with the hush money payments? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, because I'll give you a case in point. Now, I've had to submit some financial documents to an institution on my behalf, and I had to go in and redact certain things where I have paid stuff for clients. What he did was his lawyer paid the hush money, which is not illegal to do, and then he characterized it as legal expenses. I don't see how that's not a legal expense. Anything that I do on behalf of my clients during the representation, whether it be pay money or a service, can technically be classified as a legal expense. So I think it was, this is a case of first impression. Again, in the we call it practicing for a reason, because we're all practicing. We just do things and see kind of how it works and what will stick. And I think this is what has happened in New York. And I think fundamentally, when it comes down to it, when it gets before a jury, I don't know that they will find any culpability in that, because for all intents and purposes, it was a legal expense.
That's interesting. And I definitely have heard it argued both ways for sure. But just interesting to hear your stance on that. But here in Fulton County, Fani Willis has notified law enforcement that the charges from her investigation into potential election interference in the 2020 election for Georgia, that'll come. That announcement will come between July 11th and September 1st of this year. So in the next few months, what do we expect? What do you expect to unfold that might impact how that whole announcement plays out?
I don't anticipate anything that will impact the announcement or the indictment. Again, there's not any legal standing for him to be able to stop a district attorney from being able to investigate what they feel would be valid and legal meritorious arguments if there is a crime. So I don't know that there's much that's going to happen by way of this 485-page motion that was filed that would prevent or preclude her from being able to move forward. What we can expect, and probably what we won't hear much about, is that she will continue to do her investigation. And then once, between July and September is a pretty large window. And so it could come as early as July if she feels like she has completed a full and thorough investigation and is ready to present to the grand jury to secure an indictment. If not, we can anticipate that it will be likely closer to September, but we can anticipate that she will be continuing her investigation, and not much, I feel, that will happen legally that will stop that happening from then and now.
Yeah, very interesting. Any final thoughts?
Again, the article kind of hit everything on the head in terms of we are in unprecedented times. These are things that we have not seen before. They won't likely see again for generations to come. From a legal perspective, I'm always interested to see both sides' perspectives on this, because this is, uncharted territory. And I think everybody's kind of waiting with bated breath to see if we are, for the first time in history, going to have a former president who has actually been charged and indicted and convicted on criminal charges.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just want to point our viewers to our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, with this really comprehensive article put together by my colleague, Tim Darnell, that runs through, this motion, Fani Willis's response, and a lot of the history surrounding all of this, and some of the other cases that we've been talking about involving the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and so forth, and the lawsuit involving E. Jean Carroll. There is a lot there, a lot to unpack. But thank you so much to Atlanta-based attorney Erica Wilson for joining us live here in Atlanta News First to share your analysis.